Hello and welcome to Suzi's Book Bag. I have a special festival report, 3 festivals in total. I've been very busy recently and I have a mountain of books here to talk about. So I'm not going to be able to cover everything, but I went to the Oxford Literary Festival, always an absolutely amazing festival. Quite a thick booklet, many events, many chairs, people whizzing in and out of the green room. So I was extremely busy there. It's based at Exeter College, but being Oxford, there are so many absolutely amazing historic venues. Where shall I start? I shall probably start actually with Lionel Shriver. If you're going to interview Lionel Shriver, which I did for her latest novel, which is called Mania. People say, oh my God, what's she like? As if she's some kind of terrifying individual. Well, she's a sort of terrifying individual, but the answer is she's absolutely brilliant to interview. Totally quote-tastic, absolutely fearless, very funny, and I really enjoyed the novel as well. And I think the ethos of the festival is best summed up by somebody who came up to me afterwards, a woman came up to me afterwards and said, I don't agree with half she says, but what an interesting event that was. Like I say, that seems to be the spirit of Oxford, a wide range of views and opinions and writers on this side and that side of every kind of debate you can think of. And it's just such fun to be part of. So who else have I got? Oh gosh, we absolutely loved Antoine Lorrain, terribly French, terribly Parisian. This is his novel, The Red Notebook, but his latest one is called French Windows. And I think everybody in the room probably fell in love a little bit with Antoine Lorrain. He was incredibly funny and witty in a Gallic kind of way. And there was a really funny moment when one of his novels I remembered was called The President's Hat. And there is also, I have it here, there's also a perfume called The President's Hat. I'm actually wearing it. It's from Lush. So you can see the sort of image on it. And I said, oh, there's this perfume called the President's Hat. Is that anything to do with you? And he sort of went, yes, they haven't paid me a penny for it. It was inspired by my book. So what Lush said to him when he pointed it out was, well, it's an homage. You know, you should be grateful, which I'm sure he was. Apparently, the little bottle, even the image on the bottle, is on the cover of the book, the illustration. So he was super funny. His books, French Windows, is about a psychologist. So they're sort of superficially light, but they deal with quite in-depth topics. So it's a psychologist who's sort of falling in love with the woman who is coming to be therapeutised, whatever the word is. But there's a bit more to it than that. There's more to her, and indeed there's more to him. And this is about a guy who he finds a handbag. A woman has been mugged and the handbag has been dropped and the money's gone, but there's a notebook in it, and he falls in love with this spectral woman and tries to find out who she is. So they're really wonderful novels, you know, great to read on holiday. So he was a dream, basically. Because there are dropped the wrong book there. Because there are so many events, I mean, some of the events don't get huge audiences, which is a bit of a shame. So this is a case in point. I interviewed these 2 amazing writers, Jen Della Benson and Fumi Fetto. This is the proof. I couldn't find my hardback copy. Hail Mary, her book of 9 kind of interconnected stories about women, Nigerian women, a sort of amazing portrait of many different types of characters, both in Nigeria and here, all from Nigeria. And some of them are downtrodden, and some of them are getting their own back, and some are wicked, and some, again, have secrets and are not quite what they purport to be. So we didn't get a huge audience, but I swear everybody in that room just had a wonderful time, including me. Jendela and Fumi were so stylish. They're journalists, very distinguished in their field, very poised. They had extremely interesting things to say about how they write and why they write. And one of the great tips was just do 15 minutes a day. If you regularly do 15 minutes a day, if that's all you can spare, you will have something. You'll build on that. You'll have something. So like everybody else, I mean, they're super successful and these books are great, but like everybody else, they have difficulty finding the time, finding the inspiration, finding the willpower, as do we all. So just to talk a little bit about Jendela's book, she's really brought a journalistic eye to this. This is a book about a girl who, through being involved with various friends, gets herself embroiled in county lines and selling drugs. And as I said to Jendela at the event, it's absolutely terrifying in parts. It's so incredibly well researched, but there is also, it's a novel. It's got structure. There's a counterpoint to that story with an older woman who befriends the character, and again, it's just a sort of portrait of London life in all its sort of grit and glory, really. So both of them were just so interesting and fun to talk to. Here's another one, very small audience, and this is such a lovely book, A Man of Understanding by Diana Janney. It's a story about a young boy who is very much adrift, and he's sent off to stay with the grandfather he doesn't know, who lives in France. And the grandfather turns out to be an extraordinarily interesting, erudite man who, again, he has his own secrets and his own experiences in the past. And the pair of them share this wonderful friendship that revolves around food, revolves around travel and books, and also talking about the meaning of life. It's got a lot of philosophy in it, and Diana Janney, I think it's her third novel, just a gorgeous, lovely book. I have to check my notes at this point. I got up to so much. Yes. The biggest event I did was with Ferran Adrià, and Ferran Adrià is the chef behind El Bulli, what we would call El Bulli, what in Spain is apparently called El Bulli, and what he seemed to call El Bougie. This is, of course, the incredible restaurant that closed, I think, in 2011, that changed the face of restaurants, and was nominated best restaurant in the year, I think 5 years on the trot. Ferran does not speak English. We had Cecilia, an amazing translator, and I actually broke the record, my own personal record, for fewest questions. I think I asked one right at the beginning, but Ferran was absolutely delightful, real sweetheart. I think people really enjoyed listening to him talk about what he did after he finished El Bulli, after he closed the restaurant, the work that he's doing at the University of Madrid on various courses in gastronomy. I mean, he was just a fascinating guy. So like everybody in the audience, although I was on the stage, I just sat back and listened to him with great delight. And that was brought to the festival by the Cervantes Institute here in London, the Spanish Cultural Institute. So it was great to have their help. Although I didn't have to do very much in the end, it was great to have their help and their backing. And I'd met Ferran the night before. at the Spanish embassy, which was lovely. They had a reception for him. And after the event, we all went off to the Old Parsonage, which is a lovely restaurant in Oxford. Can you imagine the terror of the chefs there when they realise who's turned up for lunch? And Ferran had steak and chips. He's not a pretentious guy at all. And I asked him, the chips look lovely, the steak looked lovely. And he said, yes, it's very good. One of the things he said was, at his restaurant, I can't remember if we talked about this on stage or whether I chatted to him afterwards. The customer was king. If the customer wanted to sprinkle extra salt over the food that he brought, that was completely fine. He wasn't one of these people who, is so precious that I have created this dish and you mustn't do anything to it other than adore it and eat it. He was really down to earth, and he talked about the meal that he'd just had in a Chinese restaurant in London that he reckoned was better than anything he'd eaten in China. So he was an absolute gem. Didn't really have to do much, but that's okay too. I had to rush away at pudding time because I was due to interview Petroc Trelawney. Absolute delight, radio personality. When you interview somebody who is so adept, who is a radio personality, they speak in perfect sentences. He has the most beautiful voice. Everything is modulated. You ask something, he answers. He comes to a perfect halt. Back to you again. He was a dream. Another dream interviewee is somebody that I have interviewed a couple of times in the past, Louisa Traeger, for her book, The Paris Muse. And indeed, she's been on Bookbag. So we think 3 times a charm. It was just the best interview I think we've done. She had her amazing slides. The book is about Dora Maar and Picasso, and brilliant audience, lovely event. And we got to talk about how amazing Dora Maar is, without denigrating Picasso. It's not about denigrating Picasso. He was a consummate artist, a brilliant man. Bit tricky to have an emotional relationship with, but yeah, the totally brilliant event. I bumped into Harriet Walter, who was being interviewed by somebody else, but I was going to go and interview her at the Althorp Literary Festival, which I will get on to. Who else did I interview? One of the things about doing a lot of events is that you don't get to see all that many, very sadly. But I did go to an event with somebody else who's been on Bookbag, Pele Cox, the poet, who was talking to Rowan Williams about their experiences in and of poetry. Lovely event, Pusey House, beautiful venue. And Rowan Williams is such a sort of erudite and interesting and extraordinary guy. Obviously we know him as a former Archbishop of Canterbury, but so well read, so thoughtful, so interesting. And they both read their poems and other people's poems. Just a lovely event. So I think that's all I have to say. I did lots of other events, but I can't go into all of them. So pretty much the next week after that was the Althorp Literary Festival, which is back, and I love Althorp. I've sort of been involved with it for a fair few years, but it sort of had a rest, and then COVID happened, and then it didn't come back. So it came back on quite a small scale. But I was delighted to be asked to interview some people, including Dan Jones. He's been on Bookbag as well. I think you're probably seeing a bit of a theme emerging here. He's been on Bookbag to talk about fiction, but this was his extraordinary book about Henry V. And I just love obviously there is the Shakespeare, the big Henry V, Eve of Agincourt's speech. But one of the records of the time that apparently he said before they were, it was not one of these once more into the breach and all, we band of brothers, we happy few and all that kind of thing. Apparently he said, fellas, let's go. And there's something very Dan Jones about that, I think. Really, the meat of the matter, the sort of the feeling that you're really encountering a personality in history. That's what Dan does so brilliantly in this book and in other books. I interviewed David Baddiel about his family memoir. And David is somebody, I've interviewed him now 3 times, and I've realised he's completely different according to what book he's talking about. So the first time was his novel, The Death of Eli Gold. So again, that was a very literary conversation. We talked quite a bit about Saul Bellow. It's a kind of inspired by Saul Bellow novel. So that was very literary. I believe that was in Cambridge. And then at Chiplit Festival, which is sadly no more, I interviewed him about his books Jews Don't Count and The God Desire, which are sort of short, punchy polemics. So he kind of came out being punchy and I would say aggressive, but, sort of he had his arguments and he was going to get them across. And then this was the family memoir. And he's also done a show. I believe he did a live show this is the book based around the live show. And he was hilarious. We were just having hysterics. He wasn't having hysterics. He just delivers the line. But I was really enjoying myself. So that was fantastic. Harriet Walter, everybody fell in love with Dame Harriet Walter. What can I say? So what Shakespeare's women might have said. Now, I've reviewed quite a lot of theatre and quite a lot of Shakespeare, and I just loved her take on being an actress, taking on these roles, which were, of course, originally played by boys. And she says every Shakespearean actress owes those boys an immense debt of gratitude. They created these parts. It seems very strange to us now that really adolescent boys could be Cleopatra, roles that Glenda Jackson and Harriet has taken on. But she said, that's why the parts are so great. The boys must have been able to get them across beautifully. She talked about the experience of being on stage where you're obviously acting all the time. You're responding to the other lines as if you've never heard them before. And she said in Shakespeare, because the female characters tend to have much less to say, you have to stick to the lines. But she said that you're sort of thinking in your head, but I'd like to say this, but I'd like to say that, but I really think Ophelia should come back with. And that's how this book came about. She has written sonnets and blank verse speeches. I mean, it sounds mad. It's really effective. It's so interesting in terms of a view on the plays that we know so well. And then when she read, I mean, it was just a masterclass in speaking verse. It was so brilliant. And there was also quite a funny moment when I said, did you ever have to ad lib in Shakespearean verse because the right words had gone? And she said she was doing, I think it was Cleopatra, and she just kind of completely reversed the line and mixed 2 words up, and it didn't actually make any sense anymore, but she delivered it with such conviction that nobody seemed to notice. So she was just terrific. Helen Rappaport, pretty much everybody at the festival had been there before, all the speakers. So Helen is a regular, and she was very funny. The Rebel Romanoff, she writes about the Romanoffs. And this is an aunt of Queen Victoria who had the most extraordinary life at the court of Catherine the Great and married one of her sons, who was a deeply, deeply strange individual. And the whole thing, it's like War and Peace, except actually factual. I just thought it was so brilliant and so interesting. It's always interesting to talk to Helen. And she talks about how you do the research and going in the footsteps. Julie of Saxe-Coburg was a German princess, and Catherine the Great apparently just went shopping in Germany for brides for the imperial offspring and, you know, various sons and nephews and whatever that she had lying around. She went shopping for brides. The reason being religious. I think they were Lutheran, and that they were prepared, as Catholics were not prepared to join the, what's it called? To become Orthodox. So the Lutherans sort of went, yeah, convert, that's the word. They said, yeah, we're happy to convert. But as poor Julie found out, life at the imperial court was no picnic at all. So it's an amazing story. I loved talking to Helen about that. I also did an event with Con Iggulden, and that's his, he's in the middle of a trilogy about the Emperor Nero. Again, he gave a talk, so I didn't really have to do very much except listen in huge enjoyment to what he had to say about storytelling and how that fits into history. If you're writing a novel, he writes many historical novels about everything from sort of ancient Greece onwards, the Dark Ages. So he was talking about exactly how you do that, how you make things into fiction without completely making everything up. So he was fascinating. And then a talk that I went to, obviously, let's put that there. Obviously, Althorp is the gaff of Charles Spencer, a wonderful historian, but he has written this very powerful memoir, A Very Private School, and spoke about it, about awful experiences, really, and trauma that stays with you from, really, he went to school, I think it was sort of age 7, something like that, and strange things happened at school. I urge you to read the book. He was very sensitively interviewed by Justin Picardy, and after about 35 minutes or so, there was this absolute commotion in the room, and it turned out someone had collapsed. A rather elderly gentleman had collapsed, and we were a bit worried. We thought maybe he was having flashbacks to his own terrible prep school. Apparently not. And apparently the gentleman was diabetic and simply fainted. But we had to stop for 10 minutes to make sure that he was okay. So that was rather dramatic. And then after Althorp, one more festival to talk about, which is a beautiful, small, bijou but bound to grow festival called Ticehurst Literary Festival, Ticehurst being a village in Sussex. The festival takes place at a wonderful old inn called The Bell, which is it's a very old building but has been restored. It's a sort of art, a kind of art inn, if you see what I mean. Beautifully decorated artworks, and there's an amazing room where the festival events take place. I was there to interview Monique Roffey about her new novel, Passion Tide, brilliant novel. Monique wrote The Mermaid of Black Conch, which was a massive success a few years ago, and she was super inspiring for any wannabe writers, because she's actually very distinguished. She's had a long career writing novels, but she said that this book, it ended up winning the Costa Book of the Year prize. This book was turned down by everybody. All the major publishers turned it down, she said, and she went with a small press and paid for her own publicity. Well, it absolutely paid off. But there was a real lesson there in sort of don't give up. I mean, even if every single person says, I don't want to publish this, they were wrong. Monique was right. She was also extremely funny. Talking about her next novel, she talked about She talked about the tarot. She talked about UFOs. I mean, she was really quite amazing. It was lovely just to chat with her. And oh yes, now this chap. It was lovely to see Ashley again. This is I ended up buying this. Why I Am Not a Bus Driver. I met Ashley a few years ago at the Stoke Newington Literary Festival for his first novel, The 392, which is about everything. It's about a bus journey, basically. So I was very taken with this. Why I'm Not a Bus Driver. It's a portrait in verse of his amazing sounding grandfather. Ashley was running these poetry workshops in the mornings at the festival, and people were raving about them. I don't know what his special sauce is, but people just thought he was so inspiring and so brilliant. And it was just lovely to sort of hang around and chat with him. And then the other event that I went to, I mean, I only chaired Monique. I was sort of there for 24 hours all told, but it felt like, it felt like a mini break. It was brilliant. So there was a lovely event about refugees in fiction with an old friend, Tom Gaisford, who has published his debut novel, just published, Sanctuary. Tom is a human rights lawyer and wrote, he wanted to write something that sort of changed the way people thought about refugees and the sort of places, the places where they're kept and the treatment that they get when they arrive, really from the inside, from somebody who knows this story very well. So Sanctuary is a completely brilliant novel. And then he was on stage with Lucy Popescu, friend of mine, she was chairing, and Tausif Khan, who also has a debut novel out on the same topic, and that's called Determination. And what was interesting about them was that they were very kind of contrasting in how they approached the subject matter and how they approached writing, and the ethics of writing about people, taking on people's voice or being an advocate for them. I mean, it was just a fascinating discussion. So Ticehurst had a year off, but I'm sure it will be back next year. So do look out for it. You just sort of turn up in this village for the day and have lunch in the pub and hang out. It's really delightful. So those were my literary adventures. One final note is that I'm now deep in judging for the Polari Prize, this year's Polari Prize. All the books are from last year. It's the non-debut prize that I'm involved in. There's also a debut prize and a children's books prize. And all I can say from what I've seen so far is the standard is extraordinarily high, which is brilliant. It does mean that we're going to have a very difficult job winnowing everything down, because, again, the entries go up every single year, more and more. And that's what prizes do. They support and they encourage, and, they get people to write, get people to publish, and our job is to bring you these amazing stories. I would say at this point the poetry looks especially strong, but I shouldn't say that. I mean, everything looks amazing. Got some great non-fiction and some excellent what's the other one? Poetry. Yeah, poetry, non-fiction, fiction, covers all the bases. Non-debut, as I say. So I can't wait to hear what all the other judges think. And I'm sure I will be discussing that with you in a future book bag. So look out for the next instalment. I will find some more interesting things to talk about and writers to talk to. Thank you very much for watching. And remember to support any local festivals, any literary festivals that you have, as much as you can, and indeed local bookshops, because it's a wonderful kind of it's a kind of ecology, a literary ecology that we should all be doing our best to support. Thanks for watching.